Welcome to the Ramon Foster Show, brought to you by the Get Go Cafe and Market, where they're open 24/7, serving hot, fresh food. Moan, how was the weekend?
It was good. You know how it goes for me on the weekends. It's baseball, watching baseball, and a little bit more baseball until football season kicks up.
I had a lot of baseball on my weekend, too, and it was the major leagues over here.
I've actually grown to enjoy it even more, especially having kids in it and understanding it more. You know, somebody's probably going to, criticize us for saying this, but baseball is a little bit like hockey. The more you understand about it, the better it is for you to enjoy it too, because I'm in between phase of like hockey enjoyment and hockey, like, watching it.
Yeah.
So because I don't fully understand it. So baseball's got me to a point where I'm understanding strategy, why you bunt in certain situations and why, all those types of things. So that's how I'm correlating it right now. Baseball is
one of those games that you never fully understand.
See,
it's just like that. I'm convinced that people who are major league managers don't fully understand baseball with all the layers that there are to it. Mo, let's hit on the subject of the day with Stephon Tuitt's retirement and what's at hand. We're all kind of looking for, they've got $10 million in cap space. They can go and spend $1 zillion and go bring the Ndamukong Suh and whoever else in here.
Yeah.
But let's look at the existing roster and see what it is that they can do, or the existing strategies. What options are available to them, and do they really even need to go to the outside?
I don't think they have to go to the outside and go find a guy. I say the infatuation or the fatuation with Suh is simply the name. And I hope we're not going to be an organization just that's chasing names. We never have been, and I hope that we never will be. If he's good enough and, going to be able to make a play or two as far as Ndamukong Suh goes, I'm all for that. But I'd much rather invest in a guy that's already on roster, knows your system, and you know what to expect out of him. What is Suh gonna bring you? You know what I'm saying, as far as his durability, as far as his endurance, as far as playing the scheme that we play in Pittsburgh, which is it's a little bit different than most.
Or fitting in. Let's not forget Melvin Ingram coming in and not fitting in at all.
Especially being an established veteran that he is. The hope is for sure to get Tyson back. It's to have the young rookie be able to play a role a little bit with DeMarvin Leal, and of course we mentioned it last week sometimes with Loudermilk and just all the other guys, Wormley, that are in the fold as far as the replacement of Tuitt, or it's business as usual. We were without him last year, and the defense still did well. And I know everybody was hinging on the fact that we hope to have gotten Tuitt back to push that defense over the top, a little bit more, but we're not there right now. So I'm more about the guys in-house. I'm more about with the way they're playing defense in Pittsburgh right now, too. We should be fine.
Let's go with some schematics here. You're the guy that lined up opposite these guys. I know, because I'm like, more often than not, it feels like in modern football, there's only two down linemen.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong there. I mean, why couldn't you have a defensive line that's built on Cam Hayward, Tyson Alualu, and then rotate guys in as needed situationally? Isaiah Loudermilk for when you need a run stop. DeMarvin Leal when you need someone to get to the quarterback. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you know what? The way you're talking about with two down linemen, the basis of the Steelers' defense is a 3-4. You know, three defensive linemen and 4 outside linebackers. I know I'm preaching to the choir while saying this, but this is also the other side of it. Teams offensively force you out of that 3 down, 4 linebacker look, simply because it's such a passing league now. What they're looking for as far as defensive linemen now in the league is run blockers that also get to the quarterback. If you're simply just a run stopper, there's not much room for you in this league unless you have a reputation like Tyson. And Tyson can get to the quarterback too. So much so if you look at his game and you look at Hargraves in Philly now, that was one of the best things that have happened to his career, was getting getting an older guy like Tyson Alualu inside that Pittsburgh locker room to help groom him. So if we're looking at that as far as saying, stopping the run ain't necessarily a rule breaker when it comes down to the way offenses are played these days. Well, you got to be able to get to the quarterback. I think the way we've been operating for years has been 2 defensive tackles, and then you have 2 ends on the outside rushing the ball. We don't want to admit it, but that's just where we are in today's NFL with the way the passing game has kind of stepped up, the way the quarterback has gotten more mobile, and the way offenses will spread you out. There is no room for a D tackle, for a nose tackle as much so in the NFL. And if we're being honest, look at the rookie from Georgia, Jordan Davis. One thing I listened to a press of his recently, he was like, the one thing that he's trying to do is making sure that he stays on the field for passing downs. It's more value in it. 3 down. I'm sure you saw it. He said 3 down defensive lineman is what he's aiming to be. And that goes down to his conditioning and everything else. You look at Cam. Cam's a 3 down defensive. He's an every down defensive.
Yeah, I was going to say he's out there on 4th as well, actually.
But there's no room for just run stoppers anymore. We're going to say we're 3-4 because at the end of the day, when it comes down to being able to stop the run, that's worked a whole lot better for Pittsburgh historically, DK.
All right, let's do this then.
I'm listening.
Let's say, okay, because we know that Omar Khan's sitting on roughly $10 million that he could spend, okay? If you're trying to address this and you see as the reality, if this is your stance, that all right, we've got Alualu, we got Hayward, we've got Chris Wormley, we've got DeMarvin Leal, we've got a couple other guys, we've got enough that we've got 6, the full complement of defensive linemen.
Yeah,
and we say, okay, are we better off adding another D lineman? Or should we go and invest in like a dime corner or someone like that that's going to be more in tune with the 2022 NFL? Do you see what I'm saying? Because if they call them sub packages now, but we've reached the point where your main package is your sub.
Yeah.
In terms of usage.
I'd much rather have a DB than I would a defensive lineman. Because, and this is the other part too, Pittsburgh has a lot of these guys that have a lot of linebackers that can get to the quarterback too. Well, they have more than most. So if you put that smaller package in and you say, hey, go to work, do your thing, find a way to the quarterback, I think you can do more with that as far as being able to cover on the back end with a DB. Like, that's where I'm at with a DK. I'm not investing a whole lot in defensive linemen right now, especially for a 1-year basis. Next offseason free agency, or we're in a position where you go draft a guy, that's where I'm at. You remember, we've already had this conversation about Cam's successor or Tuitt's successor, and we really got to get to that point now.
When we come back, more of the Ramon Foster Show. Welcome back to the Ramon Foster Show. And as long as Ramon and I are spending Omar Khan's money, let's see where else we can spend it. Because if you're not going and getting to it, I'm sorry, not to it. If you're not going and getting a replacement for Tuitt, then what are you doing? Where else are you spending it? It feels like in the NFL, if you don't spend up to the cap, it feels like you're doing something criminal, right?
It feels like you're leaving something on the table when it goes down to that, man. It's funny looking at this team because it's like you're at that happy medium where you got enough young guys, but it's also looking at the threat of what if one of your old guys go out? How good are the young guys to start fulfilling those roles? And I do kind of question that a little bit, but looking at the roster though, DK, O-line, would you say you want to go spend more money there?
Probably. No. I mean, if as long as I've got a comfortable situation at backup tackle, and I'm okay with Joe Haig as a backup tackle on either side. That doesn't mean he's optimal. It doesn't mean he's Jonathan Ogden in his prime. It just means he could do the job. So no, I'm okay on the O-line.
So OL is good. Quarterbacks, I think we're solid there. Wide receiver, like they're young. There is no real veteran in that room to where you're like, that's the guy that's going to lead them. But you also say to yourself, that room is potentially so talented that you don't really have to touch it other than getting them the balls and letting them see what they can do. Even if one went out, you'd almost say to yourself, well, he'll step up. You know what I'm saying? So it's just tight ends, same conversation, right?
Same thing. Zach Gentry's probably as good a backup as there is in the league.
And so I know injuries 100%, rate when it comes down to guys getting that. D tackle, we went through that. D line, we went through that. I like the idea of these young guys and not overly investing in a veteran. And I know there are some that are still out there that you can, I say get them post training camp cuts. That's where I'm at. If you are going to go make that position and make that type of investment, I do think, okay, well, there's probably a veteran out there that you can go get. But in the same sense, though, DK, I'm like, how much are you willing to invest in them in order to keep them on the team because you're missing a guy like Tua? Like, are we going to go for the name or are we going to actually go for the actual product? Or, you know what I mean? It's so many questions as to where and why. Linebackers, I don't think there's a huge issue there. Devin Bush got to really get it going this year. We know that. And Miles Jack is in a position to come in and start right away. Also, you got Spillane backing them up. I know a lot of people probably don't, not over the top as far as that goes. But when you look at where you could be potentially drafted, let's say they're right above 500 this year, or maybe a little bit better. You're still in the 20s. It's going to be a nice draft coming out this 2023 year. I'm not into over investing right now, DK. If Omar does something, please don't get excited to spend Mr. Rooney's money.
Well, I feel comfortable within the context of this particular program spending their money. And if I do, I would spend it on a running back. Okay. The one position that I look at when I'm watching OTAs, and of course mini camp starts tomorrow, that just doesn't do anything for me when I watch the rest of the group is running back.
Wow.
Of course, you've got Najee Harris. Okay. Set him way off to the side and up on his own pedestal in this discussion. Okay. But when I'm looking at Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, a couple other guys, camp guys, and just, there's just nothing there where I say, here is a reliable, dependable, experienced backup who can do multiple different things. Oh, and by the way, in all likelihood, will offer a very different approach to running the ball. And you're smiling over there because you're immediately thinking of D'Angelo Williams, are you not?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are.
I am. That breakaway guy that you can just, you can put into any backfield and he go do work. Just what are you, thunder and lightning? You need a lightning? A tempo
that's
changer.
What you guys called them.
A tempo setter, man. But who's the guy that's out there? Le'Veon's still out there. That ain't lightning, though.
Le'Veon's not lightning.
he's not lightning. Jerick McKinnon, Devontae Freeman. No, I'm looking at a list of guys. Latavius Murray. Is he a lightning guy? I'm with you on that position. I never really thought about the running back position. You know why? Because Najee has been such a workhorse.
But maybe that's not the greatest idea. And I think that just in general, if you had a running back that you could put out there for every third series, okay, or even a running back that I was going to say down by the goal line. The problem is Najee's so good down by the goal line too. He's like, you don't have a situation in which you want him off the field, but you have to. You can't blow his wheels off here.
No, okay? you can't.
And I feel like there's just another presence that could be had with someone who was. And maybe this isn't the time. Maybe there's a reason that they haven't made this move yet, because the one thing that does leap off the screen at you during preseason football is the running back position, including the third quarters and fourth quarters of games. Heroes are made among preseason running backs. So you can wait. You can wait to see who's forced to cut somebody.
That's true too. So you say all that to say we're not going to have a pre-camp signing of a running back then.
I think so. Yeah. I also could throw in that whoever that is would not be taking up Steph's money.
No,
this is not an expensive signing.
No. But if you look at the roster, you might not be overly happy with it, but you got to say to yourself, it's pretty much filled as far as the quality of it. The experience just isn't there as much as you like it.
No, and the other thing that I know that most people, casual observers of football, never consider this, but they should. Benny Snell is a very, very good special teams player.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you don't think that Danny Smith has the sway
and
the pull in that coach's room to be able to say to the head coach, wait a second, you're cutting who?
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. 24 is playing.
Yes, indeed. I'm so glad you said that. That makes a whole lot of point for the people. Why is he still on roster? Well, he does a lot of dirty work too.
That's the stuff that nobody wants to do, and he's getting the paycheck for it. So when we come back, it's our Hey Moan segment. Welcome back to the Ramon Foster Show. It's time for our Hey Moan segment, and today's Hey Moan comes from Mitchell Dugan, who asks, Hey Moan, I love these shows. Did you guys, meaning you, the offensive lineman, ever have inside jokes, bets, or awards among the group for counting up pancake blocks or block of the year? Or did you keep a list of defenders who got pieced up? I love this.
That's good. That's a savage question. I'm going to pull back the curtains a little bit as far as offensive line play in the NFL. It's very rare that you get pancake blocks in the NFL, okay? It's so comical to me watching draft like write-ups on guys had 140 pancake block this year, and I'm like, who was he playing?
Well, they gave. There's a gift that goes around about Creed Humphrey pancaking Cam Hayward in the playoffs. And if you watch the video, all that happened was Cam was trying to get to his left, and he trips over some dude. And he falls backward. Humphrey's barely making contact with him. It's like, whoa! No, man. No.
As an offensive lineman, you celebrate it and you say to yourself, it ain't my fault you caught your foot getting tripped. Like, that's
yeah.
But in meetings, we're like, oh, did you see that? And we're like, we'll put our hands over our eyes like, oh, I didn't see his foot getting tripped right there. That's a pancake block. But one thing I learned, though, like winning the block in the NFL is a matter of like 1.5 yards, if that. Like, it's legitimately like, I call it dancing in a sense. Like, of course, it's 300 pounders going up against one another. But a winnable block is your guy not getting your guy not making the tackle. Like, you want to move them about a foot or two off the line of scrimmage. Like, that's a win. Now, when it comes down to like full out, like pancaking somebody, the dudes you're going to get is somebody that's probably not expecting the block to come his way. You catch him slipping is what we said. Like, it's one of those type of situations. One of the ones that took my own horn here for a second was my CJ Mosley hit. When I come around the corner and I hit a line, like, that's one of those hits where it's like, whoa, you know what I'm saying?
Everybody in the room.
Everybody in the room. Munch even joked with me. He was like, Moan, listen to me. One of the best blocks I've ever seen in my life. You should carry around that picture and just sign it for people when they ask you who you are. Like, this was him saying it, but pancakes don't usually happen. Not to the fact that where you 1-2 under a guy and block them. And just being honest with the question, or honest with what you said a second ago, DK, it's usually getting tripped, a misstep that have you flat backing a guy.
It's the NFL.
The expectation of you're just going to outpower guys, you get humbled really, really fast. Because those moments where you're leaning and straining, trying to put a guy on his back, all he's going to do is use your weight against you and toss you to the ground. So go ahead.
I feel like I have a moral obligation to put an asterisk or to add on to Mitch's question here.
Okay.
You're mentioning going around the corner, and no one can forget it, and nailing Mosley there. I want to, if you can, take us into the room when you got to the point where David DeCastro, you knew I was going to ask this, David DeCastro collides with Vontaze Burfict, and they're both like these two mountain rams that go into each other for the express purpose of showing who is the bigger man. There was not a football execution to be had there. I mean, there might have been, but even that was by design. Even that, everyone knew who was coming and why.
Yep.
But they both get felled too. They both go down.
They did, and that was a truck wreck. Every sense of it. Like
it was terrifying. I'm not going to lie.
Dave's arm, I think, went numb, and he had to come off to the sideline. Like it was that. bad. Like, it was one of those ones where, of course, we highlighted that one, that it was coming up. And Dave has some explicatives, like, what, you know what I'm saying? Like, one of those moments. And even us, I remember him Pounces, the hard ass of the group, right? Like, he's always wanting to see something crazy. He's like, hey, we got to go past this play. Like, that's how bad it was. Like,
oh, wow.
You respected how Dave and Burfict did it, but Dave couldn't turn it down. Burfict wasn't going to turn it down. And it was, hey, meet me in the hole and we'll see what happened. Like, watching Dave run off with his arm hanging down.
Yeah, it's not something where you're going hooting and hollering and whatever.
We saw that once, and it was like, all right, let's go past this play.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part is that there's not, what everyone needs to understand is you're not watching these like fans. You're watching these so that you can learn something from it. There's nothing to learn from that.
No,
This was a man versus another man.
I saw
nothing from football to be gained from it, but Dave, Dave.
It was like two Rams in the wild is what that was. And I'm not minimizing it or anything. I saw another hit like that in college, and it wasn't even that severe, but the way Dave's arm was hanging down, I didn't think he was going to happen. One of my best friends in this world, Inky Johnson, had a hit like that in college, and it tore up all of like the arteries and ligaments in his neck to where, you know, if you see him, he's a very well-known motivational speaker now, and he has little function in his arm. I thought that's what, when it happened, I told Dave after, I said, Dave, I thought that had happened to you. That's how violent that hit was. Yeah. So for the people who say the game is soft, let's go revisit.
And for anyone who's not familiar with the exact scene that Ramon and I are describing, our producer Eddie Providence is going to include it in the content that we put out. And also, I can tell you, Dave was fine. Dave continued playing in that game. So I don't mean to make it sound super, super scary. But yeah, Mitch, wow. That way to bring the Ramon, huh?
Ooh, yeah, that's tough right there.
Tomorrow again is mini camp. I'll be over there, and we'll do one of these after that, and I'll be able to shed a little light on what's going on over at the Steelers, and we'll talk about that tomorrow.
For sure. And you can say this mandatory mini camp.
Oh yeah, mandatory means it's okay to criticize guys who don't come to this one.